Hi there, my name is Troy Kinsey. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about how to launch a successful service management initiative. Actually, the concepts that we're going to be talking about can really be applied to launching any initiative or project for that matter. So I've been asked on multiple occasions to step in and help course correct projects that have either gone slightly off the rails or in some cases really off the rails. So where the project teams are frustrated, they're not sure what they're delivering, the communications has broke down, so really off the rails. And really, at the end of the day, the reasoning comes down to one of four causes. So we'll talk about those today, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into each. So all the concepts that we're going to be talking about are derived from a book that I wrote called Practical Service Management, and I will include a link in the description below. All right, so let's get started. So the first is the what. So defining the what are we going to deliver. Now on its surface, that sounds pretty simplistic. Of course, we all understand what we're going to be delivering. But you might be surprised. So when one of the first questions that I typically ask when I step into that kind of situation, an off-the-rails situation, is I ask different members of the team, talk to me about what we're delivering here. What's the definition of success? And then help me visualize what that looks like. And oftentimes that's one of the main issues, is that everyone has a slightly different perspective of what we're delivering, and so we're not all necessarily paddling in the same direction, if that makes sense. So one of the important things to do as a team is to step through and visualize how is this going to look like, whatever it is that we're building, whether it's a service, a process, a new technology, whatever it is. Let's step through and really talk about what this is going to look like at the end of the day. And why are we doing this? So this is often also what's missed. So why are we creating this? What problem are we really trying to solve as an organization with this project? So it's important to visualize and step through and really make sure the team understands, and also to make sure the key stakeholders, the customer, and senior leadership are all on the same page in terms of what we're delivering and why. One of the key tools that are really helpful in this regard is Project Charter, and so I'll include a link to a sample in the description below. Also, we have a video dedicated to a Coffee Thoughts video, that's right, I had to think about it for a minute, dedicated to Project Charter, so I'll include a link to that as well. And a project charter, I won't go into great detail here because we talk about it in another video again, but essentially it's a 1 or 2 page document that articulates what we're delivering, why are we delivering it, and importantly, how are we going to measure success? So that's really important as well. So we're all on the same page in terms of, at the end of the day, whether or not we achieved what we set out to achieve. All right, so that's the what and the why. So next is the who. So when it comes to service management initiatives, oftentimes there's a tendency to involve and engage a great number of people, even including on the core team. And the reasoning makes sense. It's an exciting project. It's going to impact everyone's typically impact a lot of people's jobs, and it's something that oftentimes people have been excited about and they've been built up in their minds and they want to be a part of, making a change to the organization. That's all awesome. And everyone really should be made aware, should be engaged, and should have a voice in what we're doing in terms of a service management improvement initiative. Now, the trick is, who do we have on the core team? And you want to make sure that the core team is fairly nimble, because if you have a team that's too large, it's going to be impossible to get things done. So important to have just the right mix of individuals on the team. And so what do I mean by that? So I would start with a project sponsor. So a project sponsor is typically the person within the organization, the leader, who has allocated funds from their department or allocated resources in a lot of cases as well to the project. Now, why is it important to have the project sponsor identified and engaged? For a number of reasons. Oftentimes, organizations will have multiple projects happening at the same time. And so a project sponsor can help make sure that the project stays a priority and can help the project team essentially navigate the waters in terms of not only prioritization, but in terms of any kind of political barriers that might exist. So trying to change how an organization delivers and supports services can oftentimes be met with a bit of pushback because it does change fundamentally how an organization works. So a project sponsor can be helpful in terms of helping to navigate those waters. Project manager, and obviously should be part of the team. Project manager is an individual who ideally really understands what's being delivered and why, so they can communicate that and help reinforce for the team continually. So having a project manager who's experienced in whatever's being developed or built or improved is very important as well. It's helpful to have service owners, and service owners is a term that a lot of organizations are not accustomed to. So service owners are, when it comes to service management, are the individuals who are accountable for the reliability and usability of a service. And so if we are putting together processes or tools, mechanisms, changing how the personnel work, to deliver services or support services more effectively and efficiently, it's helpful to have one or two key service owners be engaged in the project team so that they can give their perspective in terms of what's being asked of them, how the processes are going to work, or technology, et cetera, the structures, so that they can provide feedback and their perspective. It's also good to have the problem or project, to have the process owners or process manager engaged. Throughout the project. But again, you're going to want to have, or we're going to want to have a project team that's fairly nimble. So at a certain point, we're going to need to call it and say, okay, so this is our core team. These are the individuals that are going to be meeting, several times a week, and they're going to be the ones who are going to help propose solutions and propose new ways of doing business to the organization. Okay, so that's the who. And an outcome of this definition is typically a RACI diagram. And so I'll include an example of a RACI diagram or a template in the description below as well. So a RACI diagram essentially articulates who's going to be accountable and responsible for the team. Now, going back to where we started from the roles and responsibilities from the who part, we're going to want to really make sure that everyone is engaged and informed. And so one of the ways of doing this is to create a communication plan that articulates, okay, so what are the different layers of communication and how are we going to communicate and how often and in what manner are we going to communicate to different folks on the within the organization and customers as well. So it's important to have a communication plan as well. All right, so the next is the when. And in terms of a project schedule, I'll share a couple of key tips here, and maybe at one point we'll go into more depth into how to create a functional roadmap. We definitely will for a roadmap, but also if you'd like for me to go into more detail in terms of creating a project schedule, a project plan, please let me know in the comments below, and we'll do so. We'll dive into the nitty-gritty on how to create an effective working project plan. But a couple of tips, for now, it's important to have identified key accountable owners for tasks. So it's important that we're not assigning tasks, assigning accountabilities to teams or to groups of individuals. It's important to have an individual named who's going to be accountable for those tasks. It's also important to make sure that project plans are driven by durations and dependencies versus dates, so that when we change, which we inevitably will, the dates, or we change how long it's going to take to get certain tasks done, then we can see what that impact has on the rest of the schedule. And then lastly, it's important to group, actually there's two more items here. It's important to group the schedule in such a manner that we're grouping like activities together so that it's easy to see as we progress. I'll include a sample project plan actually for service management, service desk in particular, in the description below as well. But it's good to have them categorized so we can see at a high level how we're proceeding. And it'll make more sense when you actually see it in person. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's important to, again, have categories of activities, like activities, so they're not scattered throughout this long list of tasks, in other words. Okay, and there was one other. It's important to have clean definitions on what done means for tasks. So I've seen a lot of project plans where it's vague whether or not a task is done. It's kind of done, not done. And so it's important to make sure that we have crisp definitions for what complete is for the task so that we know when it's done and we can move on to the next task. And it's important that I guess the last, there are more than I thought. The last topic regarding the when, in terms of project plans, is to make sure that it's something that we're using and evolving as the project goes. So it's not something we create once, shove it in the desk, and hope things work out, but we're actually using it and managing it, maintaining it on a daily basis, the project manager at least, and coordinating with the rest of the team to make sure that it's up to date. All right, the last is the how. So the how is interesting. Oftentimes from a service management initiative perspective, the biggest challenge is that it's difficult to get decisions made. And quite candidly, when it comes to improving a service management ecosystem or environment, that's one of the biggest challenges, is that there are a lot of decisions that need to be made. And some of those decisions include, for example, accountabilities, include changes to process, changes to how we're communicating either internally with vendors, with customers, with leadership. And so those are pretty weighty decisions that need to be made. So one of the best tricks, I'm not sure best approach is probably a better word, to contending with this is to create a governance structure that's designed to enable these decisions to be made for service management initiatives. So I'll dive into this a bit. We have another video on governance specifically, but let's talk about this briefly here for a moment. So when we talk about governance, a governance structure, we're talking about a formal means to make decisions, to communicate, and to address escalations. And essentially what it is a group of individuals that have the ability to have the information to make the right decisions and have the ability and the authority to make decisions, and then agreeing up front on what the criteria is going to be for decisions. So what's the process for decision making and what criteria are we going to use to make decisions, and then formalize that and then meet on I typically set up governance to meet on a weekly basis, say on a Thursday, where we review the questions of the week, the escalations, any communication requests, and then we make those decisions based upon the criteria that we've agreed to. And then on Friday, we communicate the results across all stakeholders. So in order to make those decisions, oftentimes, and this is where a project sponsor can also be helpful, there's somebody who's designated from senior leadership who's accountable for helping with those decisions, and that person is also typically, that leader is also typically accountable for ensuring that they're communicating to the rest of senior leadership what's happening. And there are going to be exceptions where, okay, so we can't make this decision in this meeting, we're going to need to escalate this. But hopefully as we proceed, those become fewer and further between. So hopefully you found this video interesting and educational. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. If you'd be willing to share those with us, please put those in the comments below. And until then, we'll see you in the next video. Thank you for your time.